Get him out of here. He doesn't belong in our neighborhood. That was the first thing I heard as I stepped out of my truck, still in plain clothes after a long shift at the station. What Karen didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the man she was screaming at wasn't some trespasser, some random stranger she thought she could bully with her fake authority. That man was me. And I wasn't just anybody. I was the town sheriff. It all started when my wife and I decided to move into a quieter neighborhood. After years of living close to the highway and getting woken up by sirens at all hours, we wanted peace. We wanted a safe place for our kids to ride their bikes, a backyard where we could grill on weekends, and a community that seemed friendly. On paper, the place looked perfect. Gated community, clean streets, friendly neighbors, or so the real estate agent promised. But there was one thing nobody warned us about. Her name was Karen. Karen was the self-appointed queen of the HOA. She wasn't elected. She just pushed herself into every meeting, barked orders at contractors, and treated neighbors like children who needed her permission to breathe. The very first time I met her, she marched right up to me as I unloaded boxes. "You can't park your truck there," she snapped. "It's against community policy. All work vehicles must be out of sight by 6 p.m. I glanced at my watch. It was 4:30. I smiled politely. "Ma'am, I'm just unloading. I'll move it in a bit." She narrowed her eyes. "Rules are rules. You new people better learn that fast." I didn't argue. Years in law enforcement teach you when it's worth it and when it's not. So I let it slide. But inside, I made a mental note. This lady had a chip on her shoulder the size of Texas. The weeks went by, and Karen's complaints piled up. My kid's basketball hoop was unsightly. My wife's flower pots didn't match the HOA's approved color palette. Even the way I mowed my lawn was too short for her liking. She loved sending nasty emails and taping warnings to people's doors, always signed, "On behalf of the HOA board." The funny thing, half the neighbors later told me the board didn't even back her up most of the time. She just acted like she ran the place. But then came the day when she went too far. One Friday evening, after a particularly long week at the sheriff's office, I came home still wearing my badge under my jacket but out of uniform. I parked in the guest spot near the community clubhouse because my driveway was temporarily blocked by a delivery truck. It was supposed to be a quick stop. But the moment Karen spotted me, her face twisted with fury. "Excuse me," she shrieked, storming across the pavement like she owned the asphalt. "This is private property. You can't park here." I held up my hands calmly. "Just waiting on a delivery at my house. I'll move in a few minutes." She looked me up and down like I was dirt. "Aha. That's what all you people say. You don't live here, do you?" That's when it clicked. She didn't even recognize me as her neighbor. She just saw a guy in plain clothes, in a truck, and assumed the worst. "No, ma'am," I said evenly. "I do live here." "Liar," she snapped. "I know everyone in this neighborhood, and I've never seen you before." Before I could respond, she pulled out her phone. "You're trespassing. I'm calling security right now. We'll have you arrested." Now, let me explain something. This community did have security, but not police. Just a couple of underpaid guards who sat at the front gate and checked guest passes. Good folks, but not exactly trained for confrontation. Karen, however, treated them like her personal army. Within minutes, a golf cart came zooming down the street carrying two guards who looked half embarrassed to even be there. "There." Karen pointed dramatically at me. "That man is trespassing. Arrest him." One of the guards hesitated. Ma'am, we don't arrest people. We just..." "Don't argue with me," she barked. "Do your job. Get him out of here before I call the real police." I took a slow breath. Up until this moment, I had stayed quiet, not wanting to cause a scene. But when she threatened to call the police, well, that's when things got interesting. "Actually," I said, reaching into my jacket, "you don't need to call the police." Karen smirked. "Oh, I definitely will. You're going to jail tonight, buddy." I pulled out my badge, flipped it open, and held it up. "Because the police," I said firmly, locking eyes with her, "are already here." The two guards' jaws dropped. Karen froze mid-rant, her face draining of color. "I'm Sheriff Daniels," I continued, "and I live right here in this community. That truck you're trying to tow? That's mine. The house 2 streets over? Also mine. So before you embarrass yourself further, I suggest you stop harassing residents and misusing security staff." For the first time since I met her, Karen was completely speechless. She stammered, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. The guards quickly straightened up. Sorry, Sheriff. We didn't know." "Not your fault," I told them. "You're just doing your jobs. But you don't work for her. If there's ever an issue, you contact the HOA board, not self-appointed enforcers." But Karen wasn't about to back down gracefully. "Oh no. This is harassment," she sputtered. "You think you can flash a fake badge and scare me? I'll have you removed from this neighborhood for good." I raised an eyebrow. "Fake badge? You really want to test that theory?" I pulled out my radio and calmly checked in with dispatch. "Unit 1, this is Sheriff Daniels. Just confirming status check. Over." The radio crackled back immediately. "Copy that, Sheriff. All clear. Over." The guards looked at each other, wide-eyed. Karen. She looked like she might faint. Still, she tried one last desperate swing. "The HOA won't stand for this. I'll report you." "Please do," I said with a smile. "In fact, let's call the HOA president right now." Turns out, the HOA president lived just 3 houses down. By pure luck, he came walking up at that very moment, holding a leash with his golden retriever. "What's going on here?" he asked, clearly annoyed. Karen pounced. "This man is trespassing, and he's impersonating a police officer." The president glanced at me, then burst out laughing. "Impersonating? Karen, that's Sheriff Daniels. The real sheriff. He moved in last month. I've had dinner with him and his wife." Karen's face turned beet red. She sputtered, but no words came out. The president shook his head. "Karen, we've told you before, stop harassing neighbors. If you keep this up, we'll be voting on removing you from any HOA involvement entirely." That was the first time I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not fear of me, but fear of losing the only power she thought she from that day on. Things changed in the neighborhood. Karen didn't stop being Karen overnight, but she definitely toned it down. No more screaming at kids for riding bikes. No more fake violations taped to doors. Word spread fast about what happened, and suddenly, people who had been scared of her realized she had no real authority at all. She wasn't some queen ruling over us. She was just a loud neighbor who finally got put in her place. As for me, well, let's just say being the sheriff had its perks. Neighbors started waving more, stopping to chat, even inviting us to cookouts. It felt like a real community again, something we had wanted from the start. And Karen, whenever she saw me, she'd cross the street and avoid eye contact. She never apologized, of course. But the silence was apology enough. So, what's the takeaway here? It's simple. People who crave power the most usually deserve it the least. Karen thought barking orders and threatening people made her strong. She thought she could twist rules into weapons and use others to do her bidding. But in the end, her so-called power collapsed the moment someone stood up and refused to play along. Respect isn't something you demand with threats. It's something you earn with honesty, fairness, and humility. And if you forget that, well, you just might find yourself screaming at the sheriff without even knowing it.